Good morning slash afternoon slash purgatory, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's. Back from a long end of the season slash off season sabbatical. Uh,
Oh God, I'm
oh
sorry.
no,
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
it's
kidding.
spreading. It begins. This is the quarantine edition for obvious reasons. Mine's self quarantine. Joe's sounds more like military grade forced.
I-
um,
I'm
l-
quarantining myself from the Vikings news for crying out loud.
uh,
Oh, buckets.
I was gonna say, luckily nothing of consequence happened.
Oh no, nothing.
Um,
Not positive anyway.
I just to start, so people know where I am at mentally about all of this. I don't understand what they're doing. I don't get it. I don't get why. I mean, I have theories. We'll get into those. But it's just like a red wedding of an off season. Everybody's gone. They're not gonna they're not gonna be able to field the team. Just a quick summary for those of you who've been under a rock
Yet,
or away from Vikings Twitter.
wait, Joe. Yet at the Red Wedding, they did continue the Game of Thrones the next year. So hey, still
That's
got to
true,
go.
but there was more slaughter. Winter was coming.
That's
It
true.
came. And So, oh, by the way, I'm Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com. I'm here with Mr. Joe Oberly, or Joberly, as he loves to be called.
Ah, I'm. How dare you? How dare
I
you?
had to bring it back. I had to, because at this point, I almost want to alienate you just so we don't have to do this show. I don't know why we came back for me to do that, but I do not want to cover
Ow.
a football team that is now looking for three of four starters on the defensive line. Lost their two starting corners, their nickel corner. Probably going to lose Anthony Harris via trade, even though they franchised him. Oh, yeah, and they extended Kirk Cousins, which means to lots of people they're not in the middle of a rebuild for some reason. And they traded Stefon Diggs, who, you know, we have Treadwell, so nobody needs to panic about that. I'll start just with that logic. I alluded to like the rebuild continues, or this isn't a rebuild, like in some of my intros of articles as there was news of people leaving or, you know, being traded or whatever. And I got a lot of people saying this is not a rebuild. I literally had a guy say, it is not a rebuild unless you get rid of everybody, including the coach and general manager. And I said, okay, maybe we're all operating with different definitions of what a rebuild is. You know, there's
Perhaps.
in movies they call them soft reboots, not full reboots or whatever. Um, there's certainly I don't know what else you would call it. I mean, I think they wanted to rebuild the defense, and then the Diggs stuff was something that they kind of were forced to do because of Diggs. I don't think that's what they would have obviously otherwise done, or that wasn't part of their grand plan. Um, but what else would you call it? It's a retooling. They
No,
got rid of core players.
it's more major than that. It's I said before all the bleep started hitting the fan. When they did the deal with when it came out that they were going to trying to trade Harris after tagging him.
Hmm.
I said, "Oh my goodness, they're in a mini rebuild here." And at that point, seemed to be a mini rebuild. And then from that point on, one after another kept falling and leaving, and you know, I guess I'm gonna. I saw just before we got on here. I remember seeing this when the quote was uttered, and I think it was at the combine, but I'm not sure, or maybe it was at the end of the season. But it was from Zimmer, and Ben Gessling just retweeted it, and Zimmer said, at the end of the day, it is a young person's league, which was, now when you look at it, it was definitely foreshadowing to this red wedding of this offspring because, um, they're getting rid of, they're letting people go. They don't have the room, so they had to do something. We all knew something had to be done. But the fact that they're not going overboard to re-sign Everson, he's pretty old. They're not going. There's Xavier Rhodes, who still may come back. We never know; they may need him to come back now.
That
Is
would be
is
extremely depressing if he was the only one
yes.
that came back. Because now
May,
Everson Griffin is officially not coming back.
it may not he may not be too old, but his skills have deteriorated, so they don't want to give him a lot of money. I mean, Trey Waynes is not old, but he left on his own accord. I think there's when you look at all these players, some of it is by the Vikings design, and some of it is clearly not. I think. You wonder why Trey Waynes left. I mean,
Yeah.
did he just not see that there wasn't going to be enough money here, and they told him this is what we got? Maybe that's why he left. So maybe that's a little bit of both.
I mean, he got
Yeah,
14 million a year, and I saw some list of like top 10 worst free agency signings. He was third. They were saying, why would you give 14 million to a guy that mediocre? I don't know. I don't agree with that assessment. I don't think he's um a flashy guy, but I mean, what he does in the run game is I don't know. I just I
well,
guess that there was like a tipping point with them where they realized, okay, if we lose X, X, and Y, let's just burn it to the ground, maybe. Or
uh, I wouldn't say that much, but go ahead.
my theory was, based on firing George Edwards, bringing in Dom Capers, bringing in that other guy to help with the offensive line that was in Washington and Denver. I forget his name. It's like starts with an L. Um, Zimmer looked and said, okay, 2019, we maxed out the salary cap. We had every player that we could have wanted at every position on defense. It wasn't good enough. I can either put a band aid over a shotgun wound when it comes to the salary cap, or we can try to trade what we can, cut what we can, get 12 draft picks, put together a young enough unit that shows enough promise in the final year of my contract for the Wolves to hopefully say, let's try this again because look at the core they're now going to rebuild. Um,
There's sense to that, but it's a pretty gutsy move by both Zimmer and Spielman. I suppose when you look at it, they had two choices. Put the Band-Aid on and try to maybe win one more playoff game and say, see what we're doing. And then they're
yeah,
all a year older, and not, I don't think they would have gotten back to where they were. I don't know if they make the playoffs and win another game next year with the lineup they had.
I don't think so.
So
But
it's a gutsy move, and I guess I give them credit in that regard. And saying, hey, okay, this is what needs to be done. We got to do it. And he probably says, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. So let's do this and hope that, like you just said, there's enough promise to keep them around.
I mean, the move that I think perplexed everybody and that officially broke my brain, to be completely honest, and made me feel like these guys have no idea what they're doing is the Josh Klein move. Um,
Yeah, I
over
didn't.
1.4 million, you're gonna get rid of the guy who, next to O'Neal, was the only bright spot on an utterly terrible offensive line that has been terrible the entire time Zimmer has been head coach. You have those two guys in the run game opening gigantic holes for Dalvin Cook, and yes, he got. I mean, the difference between the line when he was there and the 3 games that he missed with concussions was huge. We talked about that
Yeah,
on this show,
but he's
and
not signed with anybody yet, is he, Joe?
I
I
don't
don't.
think so, but I can't
And they
imagine
do
he doesn't
have the
come
door open.
back.
Yeah, they
Let
do
me.
have the door open for him. They negotiated with him. They tried to get something done, and you gotta say understand that that's as much of a of a cap thing than anything else too. I mean they can't.
They
He's
have a lot of cap
he's not.
space now, though.
Well, they do now, but they still got to sign all these draft choices they're going to get, and maybe they've got something else they want to do. But yeah, I think they could probably up it. Maybe they're going to see they're going to have to do that. But it
I
didn't
mean,
sound like
losing Diggs saves them a lot of money.
it does. Yes, it does. And losing,
Let's see what Sport Track says. Oh, their site's down. That's not good.
I was
The
bummed
Vikings broke
about
Sport Track.
Linval Joseph, but I like what they did there. They brought in a guy that it's probably may be just as effective or not better, is younger, and it's a better cap hit.
He
So that.
shows up. He's showed up to mini camp so overweight that they didn't let him practice.
Oh,
Freaks
really?
me out. Yeah,
Oh,
that's why they.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's an athletic freak. Like he had really great combine numbers, but he showed up 50 pounds overweight to mini camp a year or two
Oh
years ago.
my. Well, then hopefully Paul Allen doesn't call him Pierce Hungry or whatever.
Let's see what Sport Track says. I don't know. I mean, I guess it looks like right now they're 30 million under, 31 million under.
Oh, that's amazing. When they were over at the start of
So
the.
yeah, they
Yeah.
cut about what 45 million in a single season,
That's amazing.
or
You know,
total,
I'm
I guess.
I'm bothered by Mac Alexander / Trey Waynes. That bothers me. I just don't know why you gut your secondary. Now I know that maybe they got to get younger, but I don't. Did we see in
But aren't
Mike
those guys like
Hughes and
25?
yeah. I mean, Wayne's is a little older than that. I think he must got to be like
20,
26.
27. You're right.
Okay,
I mean,
and I'm just amazed. I don't think that Mike Hughes and Holton Hill have blown our doors off to
yeah,
step in. There you go. But he had built up this cadre of cornerbacks. That you had to have this secondary. I mean, with Jaron Curse and Harris, and you're finally set at safety, and all of a sudden, boom!
yeah.
Just a huge load of dynamite blow this thing up. I don't quite understand it completely. I think you should have made some of these moves and established a priority with some of these guys. But so maybe some of them are leaving on their own. Maybe they're tired of Zimmer's act back there. There's the talk or speculation about Mac Alexander, kind of mad because he had to play. He was one of the few starters that had to play against the Bears, got hurt, missed playoff game, and was embittered by that. They had a rocky relationship all along because they always saw the talent in him when he was drafted, but it took him a while to swallow and play Zimmer's system. And Zimmer never was shy about saying that in public. So you wonder if at some point he says, "Okay, that's it, I'm done. If you aren't gonna make me feel like I'm really wanted here, I'm gonna go elsewhere." But yeah, I don't know.
That raises a very important question, and I mean this literally. I've been working on an article for like 2 days about this. I mean, assuming or just knowing what we know about how long it takes corners to acclimate to Zimmer's system, um, my, and the amount of draft picks that they now have, and Zimmer being in his last year of his contract, why would you trust him to rebuild this team when he had the keys, the money? He built a defense that if he was creating players on Madden with no skill point topic limit, he had everything he wanted and it didn't work, and so they burned it to the ground, and we're supposed to just be like, oh, all right, well, let's go through the process of Zimmer getting corners and maybe 3 years from now they'll be good enough and blah blah blah. I mean, that's the question A. Question B is why extend Kirk Cousins? It's like, what is that
Well,
going to do?
Kirk Cousins did say that they're really building something special here after he signed.
Well, I guess. I mean, Spielman also said they were one or two pieces away from being a
Oh my
contender,
God!
and it's like, what? You're
What is
literally six
now? It's
pieces away
10.
from fielding a starting defense. Ugh.
It's as strange, Joe, as we've ever seen. I mean, we knew a reckoning was coming. We knew that. We all said it at the end of the year. They won the playoff game. They surprised a lot of people by beating the Saints, and then they went and showed it themselves in us as well in San Francisco that they're not ready for prime time. I mean, they're not ready for that next level to play with the 49ers and Kansas City and whoever else. So when you're faced with that choice, and when you see it, that you were, because they were outplayed completely in San Francisco, and
Yeah.
that's a team that's on the rise, and that's a team that's building, going up. So you have to, if you're honest with yourself, to a certain degree, you have got to not necessarily blow it up, but you got to get younger because your defense is aging. They're outplayed. So I'm going to give him credit for that. But you raised a legitimate point. Why, when we've seen them not get it done, do you give them the keys and say, "Hey, give
Yeah,
her another whirl"?
yeah, yeah. I don't. I'm not for it. Um, that having been said, the Diggs thing, I wrote an article that almost killed me. My hair's gray now. It's like staring at an eclipse.
Oh, too bad.
Um, what?
Too bad. We all got gray hair, my brother.
It's only a matter of time. Um, why?
Yeah,
I
it's a tough
just
one.
it kills me. The article I wrote, it's on both Purple PTSD and Vikings Tees,
Everybody
where
go check it out. It was quite a bloodletting. Joe opened up a vein and then he wasn't quite finished, so he reached over and slit the other wrist, opened up another one. So
oh
it was passionate. He brought in points from all of Diggs's time here and really weaved them together. It's well worth reading. So go check it out on either one of those sites.
I appreciate that. I've actually gotten a lot of positive feedback, which is I'm not used to, and it makes me feel a
Well,
lot
it was
better about
kind
it.
of what a lot of us out there were feeling, and as Dylan once said about like a Rolling Stone, he says, he just put on the typewriter and vomited on that thing out there. Well, that's kind of what you did. You just let it all out, and I think it resonated with people because Diggs was loved.
Yeah,
I loved watching him play. I enjoyed talking to him in the locker room. He was always decent and respectful. He got a little cryptic in his later years, especially on Twitter, but he was always a decent fellow. I just said my biggest problem with him was the diva that I knew from day one, and I've said it on this show many times, and I've written it before that there was always that potential, and they had this bromance that he and Thielen always talked about. And I said, I don't know how that works when you got two guys that want the ball and want to be, and there's no clear cut number one. I don't think you can have just this even distribution. You can say
yeah,
it to me all you want, but I told you, I said, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. To be honest,
yeah.
it
You
lasted
did.
longer than I thought. So they got to this point, but it eventually came, and I don't know if it's human nature because I don't think he's a bad guy or anything. But I was really bummed to see him
I
go.
certainly think he's getting bad advice from somebody.
That could be.
The crux of my article was Diggs was my favorite player. So, for me to say what I was saying, it wasn't coming from a place of never liking him or whatever. It just basically the headline was, what did you have to be mad about here? They gave him at the time a top 10 deal for any wide receiver in the NFL. The next 3 seasons, granted, there's no dead cap money, so he could get cut, but he's owed 14.5 million every year. They gave him that deal despite the fact that he had never even eclipsed 1,000 yards at the time. He had missed 2 or 3 games every season of his career up until that point.
He's
Cousins
not a
comes
Pro
in.
Bowler.
He's not.
No.
No. Yeah, exactly. And then people are like, well, he doesn't like Cousins. Okay, 2018, sure, the season starts out with Thielen breaking all these records. Diggs did. He was a part of it because he was drawing the coverage that let Thielen get open. But
Absolutely.
he ended the year with 102 catches. Like,
Yes.
he was getting the ball. And then last year his catches went down 35%, but he had more yards, eclipsed 1,100 yards. He had 17 touchdowns in the last 2 years, which is more than the other seasons combined. So I don't buy this Cousins argument with him. A lot of people showed 3 examples of him being open and Cousins throwing it underneath. That happens in football. So my point was it's an open letter. I didn't expect him to read it, even though he seemed to really respond to negative stuff on Twitter. That he's really on the precipice of the Antonio Brown route with just the social media arguing with fans, forcing his way off a team through social media. He probably hired the same damn people that Antonio Brown did in Oakland. Now he's going to Buffalo with Josh Allen, Mr. 55% completions. Yes, his receivers drop a lot of balls, but I don't think he's going to be happy there. I think he's going to kind of, be careful what you wish for situation. When other teams can double, triple team him there, and he's got a guy who's not necessarily known for his down the field accuracy. It's just
It
It
reminds me.
sucks.
You mentioned Antonio Brown, but in a little bit of a way, it reminds me somewhat of Percy Harvin, who
Yeah.
was just the shit while he was here. And, um, after Favre left, things started to sour for him, and maybe he didn't like his new quarterback. And he got his way. He worked his way out of here. This was a little bit more deliberate than Stefan's was, but he got out of here, and his career kind of went into the tank ever since. Like you said, be careful what you wish for. It's not always greener on the other side. But I
They did
um,
get a lot of draft picks for him,
they did.
more than
They got a
Randy
great
Moss.
haul. I
So
still question what he was doing. I mean, I feel like when you describe that season of when Thielen all of a sudden was setting all those records, right there that things started probably working in the
yeah,
back of his head.
yeah.
Why not me? I could be doing this, and that's when they all talked about it. They kept saying it. Oh yeah, we're a team, blah blah blah. And it's like that old line: "Methinks you doth protest too much," because we know what you'd really like to be doing. And as it went on, that's the way it became. I mean, they're both decoys for each other, and if they, it was the perfect storm for our the Vikings running or receiving core. I mean, for years it has been nothing since to speak of since Moss left, and
Yeah.
here it was this perfect storm. All you needed was find a third guy that could stretch the field and plug him in and go, and find the quarterback that could hit him. I don't know if you know, he just thought that Cousins did not see him enough when he was open or what, and not taking into the fact that you've got to, Cousins was under duress for a lot of that time. I don't know.
27th ranked line in the league.
I don't think he watched enough film, from the all 22 to see what was going on in the backfield because, to complain about that it's not. But I think it was simmering for a long time and it finally came to a head, and so you got to get rid of him.
Yeah,
I
they
don't.
had to. I don't
Yeah.
fault them for it. I hate that it happened. I think the Saints game was a good microcosm of what was going on. He threw his helmet despite the fact that they were in a playoff game. They were winning that playoff game. They ended up winning that playoff game, but he was mad because he didn't get the ball enough. That's just a very me thing. And if he thinks that somehow this behavior is going to help him get bigger contracts or get sponsorships if he's mad about not being a big enough national name and that's hurting his pocketbook for sponsorships. This no one wants to touch a guy like this with a 10-foot pole right now. They just got burned by Antonio Brown. He lost $100 million in sponsorships overnight, basically.
Wow.
It's just I think really, and this is all speculation on on my behalf, but this is what happens when you have quote unquote advisors or friends or whatever around you that don't know how to tell you no. Like
Yeah.
someone needed to tell him
Like the White
outside of the
House.
franchise. Yes, exactly. Whatever the opposite of Lincoln's like dueling cabinets with all it's the complete opposite of that. People arguing to agree more with whomever. So yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, you know,
It
uh,
kneecapped the team big
what
time.
one more thing I just want to say, and when I had always I would rail on him every time he went to the sidelines and complained, and I would say he was always moving into that diva territory and just crabbing and this and that. Has there been a guy on this team lately with the rules in place to want to take his helmet off more quickly than this guy? You
I
got the
knew you were going to
Minneapolis
say that.
Minneapolis Miracle.
Yep.
Fine, I had no problem with it. You can have that one. But the playoff game where I think it was a playoff game or late in the season where he took his helmet off in the
Yeah.
end zone
And
and
then they got
cost
the
him an
5 yard
extra.
penalty, and then they
Yeah,
missed the extra point. Yeah.
exactly. I mean that, and then the one you just spoke about in the playoff game. It's like those three right there for me are just I think it's always been simmering and bubbling and boiling with him, and it just finally has. And they
I
said
think the
we don't
final
get it.
straw for them must have been him wearing that Cardinal shirt.
You think so?
Yeah, that wasn't an inadvertent. He claimed it was like, oh, that's all I had, and my brother had that shirt. But why post that on your Instagram then when you know what's going to happen?
And
He was just playing these. Some people are like, oh, he's just trolling, and at one point he was doing stuff earlier in the off season, and the team said, or someone from the team supposedly told some national talking head, that's just Diggs being Diggs. Like we don't, it doesn't bother us. But obviously, at some point, it boiled over. Again, well, you net 3 picks because we traded a seventh, but you
Yep.
get a first, I think a fourth next year. I don't
A
know,
first, a fourth, and a fifth, and
fifth,
a seventh. Yeah, I think that's
which
both
means the fourth and the fifth will
six.
be traded down for 3 sevenths and 4 sevenths. So we'll have the entire seventh round will be Vikings picks.
Nice.
Man, I just can't believe this is
They're
what's
gonna put, they're gonna
happening.
put a they're gonna put a camera in the Vikings war room for just the last day of the draft because they'll be.
It's
And now
just
we're going back to Minneapolis. But
and yeah, they have all the different players with the phone. They're all just answering the one phone because it's just the Vikings. Just put me on speaker. You're all
yeah,
on the team.
it's really kind of interesting the way he did his method of trolling or whatever, or working his way out. It was not as overt as other people have been, like Brown, for instance, and other people. It was just like these little jabs, and
Yeah.
people. Us out here in the Twitterverse just, oh my God, look what he said, and we would take it and run with it. He's smart enough to know what he was doing in
And
that
then he
regard.
would the next day post like a picture of him hugging Thielen and like trying to backpedal. I mean, if we were seeing bits of that, I'm sure there were things that happened over in Egan that were just not great. So,
And that's the thing about him, Joe. He always, when he was in the locker room, he'd come up and talk to him. He always had kind of a smirk behind of what he's not in a nasty way, but you knew he knew the game. You knew he knew how to play it with the reporters and what to say to him and what to talk to him. And I never felt like. I think he always kept things under his control, and this was kind of an extension of that, where he was just online, just a tweak and a poke. Then I'll backpedal, and I'll tweak and a poke some more, and always with this little wry smile behind it, And it wasn't anything that would just, that you couldn't actually completely walk back. He knew, I think, what he was doing,
yeah,
and
he really did.
it was kind of interesting in that regard. I'll give him credit for that, I guess.
I really hope he has like 600 yards next year. Nothing would make me happier. Um, this wasn't on the agenda, but it just popped in my head. What do you think of since we weren't around to discuss it last week, the adding a 17th game to the season, the new playoff stuff? My one thing with I don't know how they're going to balance road and away games with an even or an odd amount of games per
Good
season.
point.
Do they have to, do a neutral game each year, like everyone goes to London or Mexico City?
It's a
Because
very good question.
it wouldn't seem fair, right?
No,
Like
yeah,
the
I don't
Packers
know.
get 9 home games, we get 7. Like what?
I'm sure that's out where it'll be. You know, got to
Wouldn't
go
be
to
surprised.
Lambeau 9 times. I mean, my God, Aaron Rodgers is still there. That's a very good question. I was never in favor of adding him, and when I went 18, I said they'll never go 18. I said that years ago, but I would be for getting rid of a preseason game
Yeah,
and just I mean,
straight.
save these guys' bodies and have them last the whole year. But now you're going to do this. I'm not a big fan of it. Ultimately it'll be more football, and I'll enjoy that aspect of it. But I think if the quality suffers because these guys just keep beating themselves up and they can't make the season as it is, I don't know. Will that mean that? What I don't know. You have a good question though. That's going to be some. I'm sure it will switch off from year to year or something like that. But
I mean,
that is
they might as well have just gone to 18 then, because it just
right.
doesn't make sense. But I'm with you though. I mean, these guys, for as well conditioned as they are, and how it's not like the 70s or they're drinking 6 packs and smoking cigars and everything, Babe Ruth style. They're almost too strong for their own good. So people are snapping
Absolutely.
tendons and the concussion thing. And so on one hand, it's hard for them to say, well, we want to be a safer league and look at all the changes we're making for concussions, which is something you really can't fix because it's inside your brain. It's a momentum issue. Um, Adding another game when especially the players didn't want it. Even if
Yeah.
I know they're going to prorate their contracts and they'll end up making more money, but
The
there's
league will make
I,
a ton more
oh
money.
God, an extra week when they re up their TV contract, it's gonna be insane.
Yeah,
I do like the letting another team make the playoffs. I do like only having the number one seed getting a bye week. That doesn't bother me. I do like getting rid of the fourth preseason game and giving them another bye there. But I wouldn't mind. Uh, or I don't mind having another team on each side make the playoffs.
I'm with that. I'm for that too. That was the one thing I saw. I said, "Oh, that'll be kind of cool." It adds a new wrinkle and adds something else to it, and gives your team another shot because they're not adding new teams, but they are adding a new playoff team. So
And
that's kind of
historically, like the Vikings are always, and we've talked about this. They're never bad for a
yeah.
significant amount of time, like to get top five draft picks and all, like the Cleveland Browns have recently
Unfortunately,
or forever. They're always like 9-7 or whatever, and so they could make the playoffs on a very consistent basis, assuming again that Zimmer's not the coach.
how about the Browns and Bengals taking all our players?
Ah, how about that? Zimmer's old
Stefanski,
squad snapping up
Stefan,
his players.
yep, and Stefanski just picked up Sendejo, which
Oh,
I think he's got somebody else. Didn't he pick? Didn't they get somebody else, or maybe it's just coaching or whatever? But
no,
yeah.
there's uh, a big rumor that they're the ones that want to trade for Harris.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. God, I
Um,
hope they don't get him. That would be bad.
yeah,
I don't know why at this point the Vikings don't hang on to him. I don't get that. You've already your backfield is completely gutted. Why would you now, when you've got him tagged, let him go?
you're gonna need your safeties more than ever next year.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're gonna need that help, and yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't. If they're gonna trade him, keeping Cousins just seems odd to me, and we haven't really delved into that much. Obviously, everyone knows where I stand on Cousins. Um, I did just see a headline that bringing Klein back is not out of the realm of possibility. I think was the quote or something like that, which would be good because I just feel like every time they get close to some sort of depth or positive thing, they trade it
Yep.
away. Um, Alex Boone wasn't the best guy. He was out of shape, blah blah blah. But don't get rid of guys when you have no answer behind them. That's been a problem for this team the entire Zimmer era. It just perpetuates, and so it's a little disconcerting or very disconcerting because even with 12 picks, you have to think, okay, they have to fix the line still, and now there's all these needs on defense, and guess who's going to be in charge? Have you seen the new Adam Sandler movie, the Uncut Gems, the one everyone said he should be nominated
Yes.
for an Oscar for?
I saw. I don't know where you wrote that, but I read it and I laughed because I just watched it last
Okay.
week. Yes, I did.
Okay, so for those who haven't seen it, this is not really a spoiler, but whenever somebody really looks at this opal, it's this huge opal from Africa. It's supposed to be worth $1 million. It's like $3,000 a carat, 60 carats, and it's like their eyes widen and they like see, like they just get obsessed with it, like the Arkenstone from The Hobbit.
KG loved it.
Yeah, he like saw his entire life inside of it. He's like, I need this, I need it. I'll put up 40, 50 points. Um, by the way, side note, KG did a great job in that movie.
He wasn't bad. He wasn't
If
bad.
I'm sure there's not a lot of people asking for a guy that he's so big that he doesn't fit in the shot with anybody else, but man, he could be an actor if he really wanted to. But yeah, that's how I feel about Zimmer and and seeing these defensive players. He just gets obsessed with them. And so I'm still worried that they're going to use all these picks, or at least the top ones, um, on defense. I'm sure they'll take a receiver with the pick they got from Diggs because that's what they kind of need to do, and they realize the importance of that. Then you get into the question of, okay, Spielman has missed every single time he's taken a receiver before the fifth round, either as the GM or the VP as part of the triangle of authority. So that there's that whole issue there. But I just, again, not to get repetitive, but I question whether these
What were you
Vikings.
saying? What was your connection to the uncut gems? What are they?
Yeah, that Zimmer gets obsessed
Oh, I see.
with
Okay,
corners. He sees them and then he like looks at their
and
mock
doesn't see him
draftables.
objectively.
No, he just it's as much as I love Zimmer and he took over a team that was in complete disarray. I feel like A, he's reached his peak, and B, he's really just a glorified defensive coordinator. I think he puts the defense ahead of the offense uh, in every sense of the word. Um,
What Joe? If you don't, the two starting cornerbacks gone, don't you think that it's a higher priority than a wide receiver in a draft that's really wide receiver heavy? Then,
um, I do, and my point with the wide receivers was I think they'll do it, but my fear is that they're gonna do wide receivers and corners and defensive linemen, and then get around to the offensive line later again.
yeah, okay, I got
That
you. Yeah,
so yeah, I don't necessarily want them to take a receiver with that pick. I think if they're in this mini rebuild, or it doesn't really matter what people want to call it. That's a semantics argument at this point. I've discovered. Um,
well, I'll tell
Start
you,
with the line. That's
yeah,
what
two
every
moves
team
I'd like
does.
to see. I'd like to see is figure it out with Klein because he was willing to sit down at the negotiating table with you, find out the number you need, and get that done, and keep Harris, and
Yeah,
then you go into the draft a little bit, not bleeding in so many spots because then you can, grab a left guard, maybe in the third round with your third round pick, and you can get your receiver and corner in the first two, with the first round picks or something like that. They do have a second too, so
yeah.
um, I don't know. Those to me are priority now. If they trade Harris for some reason, which is well, Cleveland would probably be a good draft pick, right? If they traded into Cleveland,
Yeah,
if they got a
I guess it would be. So for whatever reason, the original person who I think it was Pelissero put out that news said that the Vikings were looking for a mid to late round pick. I wrote
yes,
about it,
I
and
didn't
people were like,
agree.
"Why won't they just let him walk? Then they get a third next year." Which I don't know
Yeah,
how
for well,
if that's a guarantee or not, because there's only so
if
many
they
picks.
yeah, if they cut him, if they just let him, if they cut him, then they don't. But he's got
Okay,
to be taken by free agency
but are
in
you
order for them.
guaranteed that?
No, but no, you're not.
Because
And
I
he
mean,
wasn't even
learning about the
drafted.
picks they got, teams can only get a max of four, but there's a finite amount that goes between the entire league. I think there's 90 something,
Yeah, yep.
and we got 3 out of 4 this year. But the idea that we're going to get a third um, automatically, I don't know where people were getting that from. But word
It
is they might get a second from Cleveland, and if that's the case,
I think doesn't it depend on where you were drafted? And I think Harris wasn't he undrafted? No, he
well,
was.
from what I understand, because I looked into it, because somebody made a comment to my first article, when even though I was just parroting what Pelissero said, is that the league does not tell anyone how they determine compensatory picks.
Uh,
There's an
okay.
algorithm that's based on draft
Nice.
pick, output, salary, so on and so forth. Um,
Okay.
so they're guarding that algorithm for whatever reason, and so I think people were just speculating that because of his impact last year that he would get a third, considering we
Yeah.
already got a
It's
third
all
this year.
speculation. You're right. It's all speculation if there's no set thing that we know why. So yeah, that makes
But yeah, but
sense.
the people saying like, well, you get a second for it. It's like, well, for him, okay, so use that second to what? Get another safety and then hope that he's as good as Harris. Why not just keep him then?
Exactly. Yeah, I hope they get that done. That's got to be one of the. That's got to become a priority right now. I mean, they signed Colquitt, they signed Bailey, they solidified the special teams. That's good. They had brought Ham back in was a big deal. Cousins,
I like that.
they had to do what did with Cousins. They had to for not only for the position, the quarterback position, they had to do it for space under the cap. So that was a huge deal. So those are all good moves. They're not, you know, over the moon moves that make you just fall in love with this team. And then with all these losses, they've got to the loss of Diggs really hurts because that takes away from Cousins.
Yeah,
I mean, it just
and
suddenly
Thielen.
it takes away from Thielen for sure, but it takes away from that re-upping of Cousins because you think, all right, here's another season with Cousins and
Yep,
Diggs and
and Kubiak's here now, and
exactly.
got
So
full power.
and all of a sudden we had to retrench and go the other way. I'm pleased with what they got in compensation for Diggs, but man, there's no way you replace him.
No.
At least not next year. Maybe you find a diamond that you can, or in the rough that you can eventually get there, but you're not gonna. I mean, the way the trajectory Diggs is on right now, and his age, you're not going to get it. But so
Best receiver last season of catches over 40 yards. But
man,
apparently he was that but mad, according to people. Cousins
I
sucks.
know,
But how
I know.
did he become? How did he reach that statistic? Um, One thing it kind of maybe says to me as well, just all this cap space opening, is that they're getting their ducks in a row to extend Dalvin.
That's
Um,
part of it.
I wrote an article that was based on an article, I think from Adam Patrick at the Viking Age, about teams that spend 17.5% or more of their salary cap per season on two positions, those being the quarterback and the running back position. Historically, it hasn't boded well for those teams. I think
Right.
they're like 6 and 9 of them had sub 800 records. Hardly any of them made the playoffs, obviously, or 800, 500 records. And
You're
so,
bringing me down. You're killing
yeah,
me, Smalls.
so and the Vikings were with Dalvin and Kirk were already uh, at 16.5%, even though Dalvin made 4 million. So it's kind of a foregone conclusion that they're going to hit that, especially with Cousins' last season salary cap hit being $45 million. Um, Literally,
He'll be
uh,
gone. He'll be
of
gone
course,
by that
yeah,
time.
it's like
Yeah.
the Adrian Peterson 18 million for
God,
his final season.
I just don't understand why a player agrees to that. But
Hmm.
because they know as well as you and I do that they're going to be gone. So does their agent. But I guess I suppose it's upfront money and it's the guaranteed dollars that's what they're after, and then they'll deal with that when they comes to it. But man, I mean, why? It just seems like funny money, and it doesn't make any sense because it's never lived up to by the end of the
Yeah, and
contract.
it makes me feel like, the situation in Houston trading away that receiver.
DeAndre
Yeah,
DeAndre Hopkins.
they tried to leak this info to like make him look bad that he essentially wanted to re-up his contract because he was making, hard. It wasn't his pay was like 50% of what other receivers of his ilk were making, and he arguably is the best receiver in the NFL. And they leaked that he was basically being a jerk because he wanted to change his
Nice.
contract before it was over. And everyone's like, the NFL does that all the time, though.
Yes, yes, they
So why
do.
that doesn't make him look bad? He's just doing what teams do to players.
Yeah,
Um,
as upset as we are about Stefon Diggs, we're not Houston. I think this is just I think the Houston Astros cheating was so egregious that they've penalized the Texans for this and
here,
made them
here's a
trade.
here's a fun talker. Why didn't we trade Diggs for him?
Hmm. I don't know what his contract is. I don't know.
It was less than Diggs, but he wanted a
What,
bigger. He wanted like 18.5 million a year to 20 million. Whereas guys like Julio Jones make 22, Des Bryant makes 20. Or not Des Bryant, Amari Cooper, I think.
maybe at that time they were still hoping to salvage it, and I don't know. It's just
That would
that's a
have
good
been,
question. Yeah,
I
that's a
mean,
good
that would have been
question.
awesome. I mean, I might have to write an article about that.
Yeah,
This
you'd
is
have
why
to
these
look up
shows
the
are good.
timing. Timing. You have to look up it on the timing, but I mean, like we're all doing with the president now to see when he said it was a hoax, and now when he says I didn't say it was a hoax. So um, you may have to
He's
line
running a
up.
tight ship. I mean, he closed the borders today, so Uh,
Nice.
we the virus won't get here, because apparently it's December right now. Uh, Jeez Louise, man, the world is falling apart. The team is falling
Yes.
apart.
Oh, but we're back here at MJ's to put it all in context
You
and
know,
figure it all
people
out.
were waiting with bated breath for us
That's
to,
right.
just come out and put things in perspective for them. Um, yeah, it's just it's been really interesting. Um,
They got
I
12 draft picks. That's going to be fun when it happens. I hope it's a deep draft because, but as you said earlier, it's really going to need to be a deep draft since, like you said, Spielman's going to trade everything down to 17 7 round picks, seventh round picks. So it gives him a lot of capital. He loves that. Generally, I think he's a pretty good drafter. You're not going to hit on every one you don't, but so I've got to knock on wood, hope that he comes through again because both him and Zimmer have got a lot coming in on this season.
Yeah, and the argument I've always made with Spielman is how much of his success is Zimmer and Zimmer's ability to not only identify talent that fits in his system, but develop that talent. Um, and then you have Dom Capers coming in, and people were saying maybe they'll flip to a 4-3 or 3-4. I can't remember which. I got an hour's sleep last night.
3-4, three
Yeah,
four.
there you go. Who knows? I mean, I guess I wouldn't completely be against, even if Zimmer's not going to be here next year, his ability to identify that talent. As long as, again, they don't go overboard. I think at this point, really, they just need to do like a backwards build of what they did. If this is, we're going to stick with these two for the foreseeable future. I know Spielman's not going anywhere, but with Zimmer and again, focus on the line first, not last. That's what most teams do for a reason. It's a passing league. You got to have that. And so,
Yep.
I don't know. I don't even
Joe,
know at this point if I'm against moving Brian O'Neill to left tackle because everything's so up crazy right now that
that's good.
maybe
Good
you
point.
do that, then you don't have to, you know, use a high pick on the left tackle. You can get a right tackle in the second, third, or fourth round. Go find a left guard, like you said, in the third round. Um, so on and so forth. I don't know.
Are you as um, nonchalant or uncaring or about Tom Brady moving to the Bucks as I am? Do you care?
Yeah, no.
Me
I'm
neither.
surprised.
I
I'm surprised. I thought for sure he'd go to LA, because
I,
he's a
I
California guy. He's obviously
yeah,
married to Giselle. I don't really. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like Joe Montana going to Kansas City.
a little bit. And I
Yeah.
just don't think he's going to be as good. I mean, they're all talking about how this is going to put him in Super Bowl contention, and perhaps. I mean, they have a pretty decent, some weapons down there, and I guess their defense is on the rise, so that's all well and good. But I do believe that the NFC is pretty tough, and I just think from what little I watched from him last season, his skills are not,
Where they used
improving.
to be.
No, no, they're
No.
not.
I mean, he's
And
still clutch, I guess, but
he's got to spend another year in a new system, or I mean, a year in a new system. There's going to be some time where you got to acclimate and acclimate to your players, and it's not just going to be like every year where he knows what to expect, because they've been doing it for so long. So I don't think it's going to be everything as great as everybody thinks it's going to be.
yeah, and there's those rumors of him going to San Francisco. I don't know how that would have worked with
Right.
Garoppolo. Um, then there's the rumors of Cousins maybe going there before they extended him or whatever. Um, with tampering laws, it's not like they can talk and plan these things, even though sometimes that happens. Uh, yeah.
It's
Here's a
interesting.
better question. Do you think if the Vikings had Brady last season, they would have made the Super Bowl?
No,
You don't think so?
no,
Neither
heck
do I,
no.
because the
They
line
don't
was
have.
garbage.
Yeah, it's not good enough. You
I
know,
don't see
and,
really
and
anybody succeeding with the 27th ranked line. But
they
as
they
some
could.
random former NFL scout told me on Twitter, the line wasn't that bad. I said, based on what? He said, I used to be a scout, and O'Neill is a stud, and Bradbury, people liked him. And I said, okay, well, PFF says they're 27th against the pass rush, and then he said, PFF is a joke. Are you kidding me? And I said,
Wow.
can you tell me why, or tell me why they're wrong? And then he said, do you even watch film? And I said, okay. There's a reason that I guess you're saying you were scout past tense because apparently PFF took your job. So there's that. I never argue with people on Twitter either because it's just not a good look. But I was just like, really,
Uh,
man? Do I
well, on
even
top,
watch film? A 14-year-old can pay $19 a month for all 22. It's not
yeah.
cool that you had a Betamax back in the 80s. Anyway,
Uh,
clearly I'm
and
handling
not
the off season well.
not to mention that the defense was not up to snuff last year either.
No,
They didn't stop anybody in the playoffs. Look at those two playoff games. They gave up
and
all
it's
kinds of
it's
points.
funny because they had so much damn talent,
Now it's gone.
at least on paper. So again, I guess why be upset about it then?
hmm
But
No, this had to be done. I just didn't think it would happen all at once.
no,
You know, that's
I really
the bottom
thought
line.
I really thought that Zimmer was going to try to make one last push somehow.
Right.
I guess I was trying to pull a whole ignorance is bliss thing and just keep saying, well, Brzezinski will fix it. He's figured out a way to make all this work. He'll do that. We'll restructure Linval. Everson will restructure again, so on and so forth. Um, but I guess it's never a good sign when Everson opts out and you
Yeah.
you go from negative 12 million to being in the black by a couple 100,000 and you're still 32nd in the league in regards to salary cap space.
Joe, here's another thing that because of the coronavirus, these people are not having press conferences, and for all the stuff that's happening to the squad right now, there's nobody out there able to ask them questions
Yeah,
and make hold their feet to the fire and say, "What's the plan here, fellas?"
yeah.
So they're pretty lucky in that regard because they have been silent. You don't haven't heard anything coming out of there, and to be perfectly honest, this has been unique, yeah, to say it mildly, over for this team to lose this many. What would you say? Four starters.
Yeah, well,
On
let's look at it. The two starting, you could argue Mackenzie Alexander was starting too because a lot of
Linval.
teams with
Yeah, that's four on
Linval,
defense.
Everson, Griffin is five,
Five.
including Mackenzie Alexander. Um,
And then your
then
start wide receivers six, and
Klein,
uh, Klein
and then if
is
Harris leaves, it'd be eight of
oh my
22.
goodness. No, not many teams survive something like that.
And that's where I get a little. I was getting a little bitey on social media because people were saying this was normal off-season churn, and one guy goes, "This is the types of arguments I've been dealing with." One guy goes, "Teams replace players in the off-season. The Patriots do it all the time. They've won 11 division championships in a row." That was his argument. That the Patriots
Nice.
are good, therefore shut up. Like what? Nothing to do with the Vikings whatsoever. To show me when the Patriots lost this many people. I can't remember an off season like this. And
No,
and again, I'm sleep deprived. I'm trying to think. It certainly
thank you.
hasn't been this way since I started covering the team in 2015.
Thank you
Um,
for taking those arguments so I don't have to.
ah,
That's
it's just it's wearing on me. I said this to my dad earlier today. Nothing in regards to what we do for a job here irritates me more than when people don't let me be negative or upset. When somebody angry optimism, like shoving it in my face, like don't be upset, And my retort lately has been being a pessimist about the Vikings means I'm batting 1,000 since 1961.
well, you shouldn't have told me that. That's your nothing makes you more upset because I'm going to use that for your at you in the future since you started off the show with the
Then I'm
name that
gonna
shall
start.
not.
No, did you just say
Eh,
that? 'Cause I was like, then I'm gonna come back with some Joberly,
Well,
but
that's
I
why
already
that's
did it.
doing it. dude. I'm getting back at you. You're the one that keeps. You started
I
out this.
know. I
Go with
broke
that.
my toe too. Like
Yeah, that's too bad.
it's been a
You broke your
rough. It's been
you
a
broke your
rough week.
toeberly.
My toe. I miss this.
We'll have to do it again.
All right. Well, this has been Morning Joe's for the afternoon of the 20th of March. We'll be back next week, assuming we're not all under martial law and fending for ourselves. Hang in there, everybody. We're gonna be okay.